Hey guys, we have this Ford Ranger in the shop and it's a super solid truck. However, it's pretty bare bones. So today we're going to install speakers and we're also going to install an actuator in it. So I am huge on convenience, but the main thing that I always want is I always want to have power door locks over power windows because I always have to lock and unlock the vehicle. And it's a really big pet peeve of mine to walk up to the vehicle, turn the key. So I usually recommend people get power door locks over anything else. They're pretty easy to install for installers. They don't cost much. Power windows you can do, they're a little more involved, but if you're going to do anything for your vehicle and you're adding security, remote starter, or a combination of the two, you should always have power door locks. It makes life so much easier. Here's our actuator, so it goes either up and down or back and forth, however the orientation needed to be. There are plastic gears inside, so the orientation of this and reducing the amount of tension you have on this is very important because this is going to go on the rod that you manually control as the driver or passenger, and it just basically replicates that motion to lock and unlock the door. So we're going to show you how to mount it, because if we mount it where there's too much tension, they don't last long, and then that's when you hear weird noises come from these things and they start to stop working. This is the layout of our door. You see here is the manual release, and you can actually see the rod right here where my hand is, and this is the area that we're going to attach onto. So we're going to actually install the actuator on the other side. If I install it outside here, it's too hard to get to this rod, and you're not going to be able to get the door skin back on. Don't worry about it. They can get a little bit of moisture on them. I've had the ones in my truck for about 10 years now, and they're just fine. I've only changed out once, and that's because I had too much tension on it. So here we just have to map out where we're going to actually mount it, and then we can go ahead and attach to the rod in here. So what I do is I roughly get where it needs to be on the inside, and I have an idea, and then I bring the actuator back to the outside and I use it as a template to know where the holes have to be. And I mark it off with a pick, and then after the pick I go back and I find those spots, and I mark it off even more. That way I can drill these out. Keep in mind, before you start drilling out, have the window up. Depending on the vehicle, some of these windows are very close to the inside skin, and when you drill through, it punches through and it grabs and it wants to ream through and you hit the window. So always have the window up whenever you're working inside a door. The next biggest thing we have to do is we have to run wire from inside the door into the cab. So we have run this wire, you can see here, it is through the door boot. We do not go around the door boot because that's ugly and unprofessional. So always in the door boot as much as you can. There are some rare instances where you have to run your own grommets and run your own loom. 95% of the cars out there, 98% of the cars, you can go through here. If there's Molex plugs, we pull out the Molex plugs, we drill small holes, and we pass it through the Molex plugs. That's just what we do. So what we're going to do for this particular vehicle, you see we've diamatted, because while we're in here, we might as well do speakers too. We have factory lines running all the way here. So what we're going to do is roughly map it out, and then we're going to loom it, and then it's going to look like it's factory wiring. Okay, so we are all wired up, so obviously we're going to turn over our zip ties or zap straps over so it looks, I don't know, it's just an OCD thing I do. I always think that the heads of the zip tie should always be at the back portion. But you can see here I ran with the factory line. It's out of the way. We know it's not going to get in the way of the window or anything. And then we can see up here is our connection to the rod itself. So if I just move this up manually, you can see that it will actually move the rod up. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to put this door back together, and we have the line out, and we're going to manually test the lines first to make sure that this rod's okay. And then I'm going to quickly show you guys how you'd wire it up on a relay. And here's the wiring inside the loom in case you guys want to see how I made my connection. Another note I want to make about the rod, like this one's super simple. Like you can see how small that is. Like it's maybe like an inch maybe in length. So this is like a best case scenario how you're going to attach a rod onto a vehicle. But there are some times where you're going to have to put your actuator somewhere kind of weird, and you're going to have to make different bends with this. So what you have to keep in mind is you can bend this as many times as you want, but the actual motion from the actuator, whatever you're attaching, has to go relatively straight. So we can have a bunch of bends to attach to it, because if it's off at an angle and it's trying to push up, you're think it's going to work okay because you're moving it up and down manually. Yep, that should work. If it's pushing or pulling it at an angle, it's probably just going to get hung up, and you're not going to have smooth motion So you have to make sure that wherever that motor is, it's parallel. That way you're gonna get good motion out of it. We are now gonna test it. So you can see here I have my power probe. You can do this with, I've seen guys do it with drill batteries. I just use my power probe. The trick with the power probe, if you guys do have this, whenever you're testing, whenever you're trying, you have to be careful when you're inducing power into any device. But with the power probe, make sure you hold it first, then hit it. That way it sparks outside the unit, because what happens is you actually wreck the circuit boards inside of these things. So always hold it first, then activate your device. Don't hold it and then activate the device. Just a little quick tip. So we're gonna go ahead and test our actuator. So right now we're gonna unlock it. We're gonna test for lock functions. So one side of the wire has ground, the other side is gonna get the 12 volts. So that it locks. And then we're switching the polarity. And go the other direction. Unlock. So yeah, we have good operation, so we're good to go. Okay, so I'm going to give you guys a crash course on this. If you are familiar with relays, you'll be able to follow along very easily. If you are not familiar with relays, I would highly suggest that you have a professional install shop do this, because you want to have the best possible result, and it doesn't cost that much to pay a pro to do this. But anyways, so your main power is going to be fused. Now we have the white is going to be 86, and 87 is the yellow. So just so you guys know, so 86 and 87, this is going to go to 12 volts. Our 87As, we'll need these, the red over here, that is going to go to ground. Now we have these black wires, this is 85. 85 is going to be your trigger wires. So typically on most aftermarket alarms or remote starters, they have a negative output for locks. That's why we want these on negative. So 85 will go to your lock and unlock triggers. The blues over here are 30. So pin 30, each one will go to for lock or unlock. So it's going to be one set of wires off the actuators is going to be one relay, and then the other one's going to be the other relay. So you have two wires coming off of your actuators. So let's say it's green and blue coming off of it. You would take both green wires and hook it up to one relay, and then take the blue wires and hook it up to the other relay. The reason why we do this is you have to change the polarity to either make them go up or down. So if you have one wire, let's say blue is going to be ground, and then green is going to be getting the 12 volts, it's going to go down. And then if you flip, it's going to go up the other way. That's why we have 87A hooked up to ground. With 87A hooked up to ground, when a relay is at rest, that will make the 30 pin of the relay at rest ground. While the other relay is being activated, it will go 12 volts, and then they'll flip depending on which direction you want it to flow. So like I said before, guys, if you're not familiar with relays, comment below and we can do a video where we can discuss this more. The thing about relays are there's a lot to cover. You can do a lot of different things with them. Old school ways, we can actually run multiplex systems with them, with ground and resistors. You can use them to drive aftermarket actuators typically. For those of us that work on older Ford vehicles, you still might be using this to do 5-wire. So there's a lot of ways we can use this in the install industry. I use these to run lights. It's always good to run because they can handle quite a bit of amperage. I use these to run basically everything. When I'm trying to isolate different devices like horn and headlight on my security systems, I always run relays just to keep everything separate from each other. And there you guys have it. That's how to put an actuator into a vehicle that has manual door locks. Now, I will note there is a type of lock system that I personally don't do and that I actually turn away, and it's the cable locking system. I know it can be done. There is an adapter out there. I found like I had to JB weld onto the cable because the set screws would just keep, it's basically, there's a cable you have to cut off the sheath and they put a piece of metal on, and the set screws just clamp onto that, and I'd have to keep adjusting the set screws all the time. And I had to do that on like a couple friends' cars just to try it out. So for me, I don't do cable actuators because I just find you can't adapt onto them reliably. If I were to ever do cable actuators, what I would do is actually go to the factory, get the latch with the power door lock motor built into it, and then power that up. That's how I would do those kind of vehicles. But for any other regular vehicle that just uses rods like we showed today, that's how an actuator goes in.